Kathy Carlson. I'm here at Hartnell College with my friends and colleagues. We're doing an ABT 131 food safety course, and I have been granted permission to put this onto our YouTube video streams. Today what I want to go over is the structural content of the auditing systems that are both international and local. So what I'll do is I'll start with the international, which is ISO, International Standard Operations. That's not what it's called, but that's okay. 9001 is for internal auditing training, right, in food safety. And then there's ISO 22000, which is food safety. It's also called FSSC 22000. If you want to work in any of the large packing facilities or companies, you'll probably want to get one of these certifications under your belt. I highly recommend that you get this through an agency that is internationally recognized, so that then you're not refined to just the United States. You can go anywhere. It's a week-long course. You can get it online, I think now, since COVID. You'll have to look it up. When I took it, it was an in-person course for 5 days, and then you had to take an exam at the end and get 80% or better. You are not allowed to take the binder or any of the materials home with you, because these were put into place actually in the 40s and in the 60s, 40s through the 60s. And in order for them to recoup their costs, these courses and the price of these courses then recoup the costs. Whereas now with the internet, we have a lot of open source information. So you might be able to get an online training course but not have to go in person, which will save you a lot of money, because I think I spent a good $5,000 or more per class to go. Okay, so these are international standards. There's a whole bunch of those. Aerospace, there's electronics, there's everything else. So when I worked at Hewlett-Packard, we were going through this ISO standard requirements and regulations and getting ready for it, so that we could sell our instruments all around the world. So now when I see ISO and the structure and what we're doing here for food safety, it's like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, because we did it in electronics. It's the same basic standard principles, but then they're applied to a particular commodity or project. Okay, so it starts with ISO standards, world level standards. Then you have, it comes down to another layer of inspections and agencies, which are sometimes more commodity specific. So for instance, you have Primus, you have USDA, you have LGMA, you have, what else do we have here? GFSI. Okay, and then Primus would be GFS, as well as their other, they have a checklist called for farm, one for harvesting, one for this, one for the other. And then there's GFS that has a module for management, a module for harvest and such. USDA has what they call a GAP. They have the Harmonized Gap. They have the Gap Plus, or is it Plus? I think it's Plus. Okay, this is the 17-page one that I was talking to you about the other day. This one's about 37 pages. This one's probably closer to 60 pages. The Harmonized Gap was put together by United Fresh here in the Salinas area. And what they did there is, in an attempt to reduce the number of all these certified agencies' requirements to then sell your product to one buyer, Kroger, Walmart, Cisco, something like that. You only needed to do one that was accepted by all buyers, was the purpose of that. They have achieved that. Now we're still getting the buyers to buy onto it, no pun intended. Okay, LGMA was put together after the spinach outbreak here in 2006, and that covers 14 lettuces only. GFSI is Global Food Safety Initiative, and they have, for North America, it's called Harmonized Produce Safety Standards, and for international, it's fruits and vegetables. Okay? Then you have commodity specifics for like tomatoes, cantaloupe, and I'm sure there's a couple others. Then we also have the organics, right? We have the NOP, which then, under that, we have the certifying bodies, CD, certifying bodies. And on the USDA website, you can access all of those certifying bodies here in the United States, which in this area include, but are not limited to, there's always CCOF, Community Alliance with Women Farm. No,
California
that's
Certified.
another one. Thank you. California Certified Organic. That's another CC organization. We have QAI. We have ASCO. We have Oregon Tilth. Again, this is just a few of them. The website has all of them. So what I'm trying to show here is that there's layers of review and requirements, okay? So just like an onion, okay, good enough for an onion? Within these agencies, as well as within the structural components of the auditing agencies, you'll have maybe the inspector, then you have the certifying body supervisor, then you might have the agency. Okay, so here's an example. LGMA, you have the inspector that goes out there, who's actually CDFA, right? Okay, that's your inspector, CDFA. Then you have LGMA. It goes to a fine gentleman who I've forgotten his name. He actually overlooks whatever the inspector has turned in, all right? Now in turn, LGMA has to be inspected by an ISO agency to make sure that they are following the structure of the ISO auditing structure requirements. Okay? So, I personally like more layers than fewer layers. It used to be that Primus, all of the report information and final decisions of the Primus checklist was all on the inspector. And then he turned it in, it was done. So that meant if the inspector was maybe having a bad day or wasn't looking really close, they'd miss something or add something that may or may not be of interest. The more layers that you have, the more eyes you have on it. Everyone perceives things differently. If it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. That gives you that fabric that I was telling you about, that then you have fail-safes in the system. If you're relying your entire business on one person's set of eyes, I would much rather have 6, 8, 15 eyes, 20 eyes on my project and what's going on. Okay, so within all of these, right, so we have, say we just have, this is food or produce even, right? We want to call it. We're just calling this layer the produce. We have some that are specific to some commodities, even very specific to one commodity, including cantaloupe. Okay? Or you have some that cover all of your, these they call it RACs, and I remembered it earlier too. Raw agricultural commodities, RACs. Raw agricultural commodities, which are spoken of in the FSMA website and information there. Good. That's the whole auditing map in one. Questions? Yes?
So the bottom portion make up the ISO, or is it just, are they different?
No, so, good question. So what this is big generic things. You're going to, continuous improvement to make your business better. Conflict of interest, you're not gonna help somebody get to the answer, because then if they take it on, then you're auditing your own work, and that's a conflict of interest. These are the big, broad questions of any company, and then it narrows it down into more specifics. Some are more specific than others. Primus, USDA, GFSI, all work with all of the produce commodities. Whereas leafy greens marketing agreement just does 14 lettuces, tomatoes just does tomatoes, nothing else. Cantaloupe does just cantaloupe and nothing else. National Organic Program works with all commodities. And don't get me wrong, we're just talking about produce here in this demonstration. They have them for other commodities too, other branches of food and things like that. They also have specific ones for fish, and then specific ones for other things too. But this, I'm just focusing on the produce. And fresh cut produce, usually fruits and vegetables, that sort of thing is what I'm talking about here. Good question. Any other questions? Okay,